Pakhuis de Zwijger. Al meer dan 15 jaar dé plek om elkaar te ontmoeten. Met gemiddeld 600 programma's per jaar geven wij ruimte voor het uitwisselen van ideeën. Zo kunnen we elkaar inspireren, verbinden we verschillende initiatieven en geven we kennis aan elkaar door. Met onze programma's gaan we dagelijks in gesprek over stad en land van morgen. We zoeken naar een inclusieve en rechtvaardige stad. Maar ook naar een stad die groen en klimaatneutraal is. Van creativiteit tot ruimtelijke ontwikkeling. Samen werken we aan een leefbare toekomst voor alles en iedereen. Daarom zijn onze programma's gratis. En dat blijven ze. Maar dit kunnen wij niet zonder jouw bijdrage. Steun ons daarom met een maandelijkse, jaarlijkse of eenmalige donatie. Word vriend van Pakhuis de Zwijger.
Okay, good evening, hello, and welcome everyone to what is already the third episode of the Feminist Climate Academy here at Pakhuis de Zwijger. And today we're headed for a very interesting session. It's so lovely to see all of you here. We still have some people in the back arriving. Just hang your coat and join us in for the conversation today, because as I said, today will be all about a feminist energy transition, which is ever so incredibly important. I mean, I think we've all seen the news, right, with what is happening in Congo right now with coltan mines, and at the same time we know what is happening in South Africa. So I think if there's ever a moment that it is a good discussion to have all together, then right now is it. My name is Haja. I am a former United Nations youth representative, co-founder of 2100, but above all very delighted and honored to be your moderator for today. Now, I mentioned this already. Thank you. Oh, I love this. I guess this will be my favorite corner of the night. I'm sorry, people on that side, but I mean, they've proven it. Trying to start like an applause battle for myself. I am joking. Now, I wanted to tell you a little bit more about the Feminist Climate Academy. I mean, I already mentioned it at the start. It's the third episode, but the Feminist Climate Academy, it's an initiative by ActionAid. I mean, ActionAid, it's an international women's rights organization that is really advocates for an equitable and also sustainable world where women's rights are upheld, but we're also making that sustainable transition that needs to be made. Now, ActionAid, they work together with women communities, local communities worldwide to really make sure that we ensure such a just transition that we're going to be speaking about today as well. Now, the Feminist Climate Academy in specific, it really teaches and organizes 7 learning sessions for young people where they learn more about lobbying, about activism, about making impact on important topics such as this one that we're discussing today. The first and second episode took place. They've been recorded. So if you want to, you can re-watch them on the website of Pakhuis de Zwijger. Or if you want to, you can also check it out on YouTube. And that being said, this one will also be live streamed and recorded. So if you really enjoyed today, you can always re-watch it at some other point. To our online audience, I would say a very warm welcome to you, and so lovely that you're joining in from wherever that is. Now, this session today will specifically focus on the impacts of the energy transition. I mean, we all know that we have a big transition to make, and time is ticking for it. At the same time, we also see that many of the technologies that we need, whether it's renewable resources, whether it's windmills, whether it's electrical bikes that we're using, whatever it is, a lot of these new sort of renewable materials require critical minerals that are extracted from mining communities without paying enough attention to the impact to those communities where it's being mined from. And that is specifically the conversation that we want to have today, because most of these critical mines are mined and extracted from the global south, including South Africa, which, for example, houses most of the manganese mines that we'll be speaking about a little bit later on. And the working conditions, the way in which these communities are affected, the way in which these people are affected, is really something that needs to change and is really something that needs more attention. That is also why I am honestly very much honored, but also incredibly excited to, in a little bit during the panel, hear from women from South Africa, from these mining communities themselves, about how they're impacted, but also about how they see the road forward and how we need to change our ways and move into a future in which we can have a just and a feminist energy transition, one in which women from the global south do not have to pay the highest price for that transition that we need to make. So a lot needs to happen. There is an urgency, I'm sure you all understand that. But before we start, I would also like to hear how everyone here is feeling. And to do that, I have prepared a little statement, which I want to read to you. And if you agree with the statement, some people know the drill if you've been at previous sessions. If you agree, you stand up. And if you disagree, you remain seated. And if you're a very nuanced person, then you can do a very good leg exercise and stay stuck in the middle. But I'm not sure if you can uphold that for very long. So everyone gets the drill, right? Just to run a test, my first statement is, I understand the rules of this game. Let's just check if you got, okay, yes, great. There's somebody that wasn't paying attention and everyone starts popping up. That's a very intense thing to happen. Oh, you're doing the leg exercise, I see. Then you very much listened very well to what I was saying. Okay, you can all sit down again. You understand the drill? So now my real question to you is, I've sketched the urgency, right? We know what the status quo is. We're not where we need to be. There are a lot of human rights violations. People are working in heinous circumstances in these mines. And at the same time, we know that a transition, an energy transition, needs to be made if we want to ensure a livable planet for all. So we know the urgency. We know that we have to get there, and we're not there yet. But I am curious to hear from you whether you're optimistic about whether we can get there, whether we can make a just energy transition. So my statement is, I am optimistic that we can reach an energy transition that is just, so one without the exploitation that we have right now. If you're optimistic, please stand, and if you're not, remain seated. Take a moment to think. Now, we're not doing no nuanced hands yet. Okay, I see some people. Oh, some people are in the middle. Okay, now freeze. Everybody freeze. No, if you're standing, you have to remain standing. If you're in the... I'm going to start with you guys because I will not do this to you for so much longer. You are in that notorious midway sit. Why?
Sometimes of our policies, we are not sure what it's going to allow us. Because the government is having the power. So if we can break that power and as a society fight for it, then we'll break it in and then I will agree.
Right. But you were in a midway sit because breaking power is a big thing to do. Are you optimistic that that is going to happen?
It will happen. The society have more power than everything.
Oh, I love this energy. Give it up. But at the same time, I see some people remain seated. I see you remain seated. Would you like to share why?
Yeah, because I'm worried. Yeah, that's literally the only reason.
Yeah. And so, do you think we can get there? I mean, you remain seated, so it means that you're not as optimistic that we're going to get there. What would you say is the biggest thing that is standing in the way? Power has already been mentioned.
It's literally what I said. It's stress, it's worry, but we can't keep hanging on there. We have a responsibility as well. So this is a lazy answer. We can't stick with this. Yeah. We have to be standing up like he does. Yeah. Yeah, and like they do. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Like they do. So I'm going to go to you. You're standing up. You're optimistic. Tell us.
Yeah, I see a lot of changes in society at the moment. For example, the climate crisis was something that only some people are talking about. Now the whole society is moving around it. And yeah, this is also a next step. I think there's more and more attention to due diligence, etc. So,
okay. Okay, cool. So I sort of hear you saying, hey, if we treat it as the crisis that we is, then we can mobilize change fast enough. And if we can do that with awareness, then hopefully we can also do it with action. I like that. Somebody that has a burning thing that they do need to share before we continue. No, nobody. Good. Then I think we've covered it. Thank you so much. And please keep on allowing that thought process to continue because we'd love to hear from you tonight as well. In the panels, if at any point you have a question, just raise your hands. And if it fits within the time, then we'll definitely take that question. So thank you so much for sharing as well. Now, so we've mentioned some of these ongoing issues right now, and we know that we need to change. We know that we need to have a conversation all together about how we're going to change a system that currently is based on exploitation and where people from the Global South are disproportionately more affected by those circumstances. And to do that, we're going to need all of us here to engage. So please do that. Please listen. Please also share. But before we go into these panels, I am very delighted that we have an opening speaker for today, and she will share more with us about the importance of making a sustainable energy transition without harming those in these, for example, these mining communities that are affected most. So I'm very delighted that she's here in our midst. Can I ask for a big round of applause for the Deputy Mayor of Amsterdam, Zita Pels.
Well, thank you, and what an audience. I was just thinking, like, how many feminists in one room? I'm already loving it. Just being here is giving me so much energy for the rest of the week. And thanks so much for having me, ActionAid, and also the brave women who are here. I'll talk to you directly in, well, at the end of the speech. Because I think my main objective for tonight is that we have to put everything we have in making sure the energy transition is embedded in deep social change. Let's make it a transition towards a new system based on environmental and social rights, not just a different energy source and therefore the reproduction of the same system. The climate crisis urges us to take action in a very high speed. In the Netherlands, we have the threat of water. But elsewhere, we already see the effects of our big footprint. You see it in the floods, you see it in the fires, and in more inequality and hunger. And I think there are three things we should not reproduce in fighting the climate crisis. One, our economic system of more, more, more. The top 1% of the world population, the super rich, have seen their wealth double in the 21st century. We just started this century. How could this be? With their companies and uses of materials, they are the #1 polluters. Spreading wealth within and between our communities has to be the standard for this transition. Second is inequality between men and women. At every scale, our city, country, and worldwide, women are hit hardest by growing poverty because of the high energy prices, by lower access to work, to education, to high positions, and also a higher health risk. And as the mining conflicts show, even they have the price of their lives on it. Third is another very painful one, the colonial structure in our world. And as a Western city, with a history in enabling slavery, we have an extra responsibility. An apology for our past is not enough. We have to actively reach out to the countries who are hit by Western exploitation. We have to research where our materials come from and if they are made responsibly. We have an obligation to face our responsibilities. This may be painful, but we cannot look away. So what can we do? One, regulate. Let's not be afraid. In EU and on country level, for the sources and production of materials coming in from other countries, we can make sure that they are met with the boundaries socially and environmentally. We can do it right now. We have an election coming up, so that's a tip for all the Dutch people here in the room. Two, tax pollution and the abstraction of raw materials. We have so much material already in the world. Let's reuse it so we don't exploit other communities. Three, put women in leadership positions in the energy transition. We have already called on our Minister of Climate, Rob Jetten, to see that in the COP28, he puts the gender case forward, and he will show the other leaders, and also the Dutch leaders, we have to have more women in charge fighting the climate crisis. Four, one of the things we can do locally in Amsterdam that we are doing right now is that we have set our goal that in 2030, all that we buy as a city will be circular and will meet the boundaries of the world environmentally and socially. If we can do it as a city, the rest of the world can do it too. So why not set the example in EU and in the Netherlands that we will be circular even before the set goal of 2050? We can show everybody what you can do as a government. We have that responsibility. 5, and maybe also the most, for me, the most personal point in all, let the voices of women be heard. It's such an honor to be with you tonight. Your power touches me deeply and is an inspiration for our city, all the work that you do to fight for your communities. So I can make you this promise. I will use my stage, like today, as a deputy mayor and all the stages that I will set foot on to tell your story. So I will listen closely and tell your story again and again and again. My stage is yours. And I hope this day marks the beginning of a long collaboration. Thank you so much for what you do.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Zita, before you leave, I really want to thank you. Thank you so much for that speech, and I also like how concrete you made it. It can, like, we can make it very specific. More women in these positions of decision making, re-looking at our economic system of more, as you said. What I also think with regards to this specific issue is the fact that some of these materials are so omnipresent in our lives, right? I mean, even I mentioned some things: windmills, renewable resources. I also mentioned e-bikes. I mean, I wouldn't even know, do people here in the room have e-bikes? Can I see hands if you have an e-bike? Okay, I see some Amsterdammer hands going up over there. It's okay, don't worry. But I mean, ActionAid, for example, they launched the Fair Bike, which was a 100% ethically sourced e-bike to really, but it was launched more to raise awareness about the potentiality of creating products that are ethically sourced, and that we need to make a shift in that sense. What is the role, what would you say is the role of these sorts of initiatives and almost like entrepreneurialism that we also need that embodies this more?
Yeah, well, we absolutely need it, and I think the Fair e-bike was a wonderful initiative, and I had the honor to open it together with Marit, so that was fantastic. And I think we really need, especially for Western cities, we have to show that we can change our world and not only make it worse. People think, well, I have to let go of a lot of stuff, and partly that's true if you're very rich. Let's not beat around the bush. If you're very rich, you have to let go of a lot of vacations by airplane and stuff like that. We can do it in a different way. But if you're living your normal life, I think there's also a perspective of changing our city, making it more green, making it more sustainable, making it more healthy. Yeah. And I think we need entrepreneurs to show us how we can do it. And initiatives like the Fair e-bike is, I think, fantastic, because it shows us we can do it. Yeah. It's possible to do it. Yeah. And I think we need more examples to that, because we need our imagination to do this.
I like that. We need to make it very specific. Can we once more get a big round of applause for Zita Pels, everyone? Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. You know, it's showtime when we place ourselves behind the real table, because we're going to be starting with this very first conversation. And for that very first conversation, we really want to zoom in onto these lived impacts of communities around the world. I mean, we can read about it, we can see it in videos, but it's never the same until you've lived it. And that is also why we are, again, incredibly delighted that we have speakers here today with us that can share more about that lived experience and what that impacts look like. So can I ask you to give a big round of applause, first off, for the branch coordinator of Mining Affected Communities in Actions and Women Affected by Mining United in Action. Please give it up for Monica and Kobo, first of all. Welcome. Okay. Welcome, Monica. Please, you may, if you'd like, am I right? Thank you so much. Thank you, Monica. And then I am also very delighted to invite forward decolonial activist and artist. Please give it up for Chihiro Geuzenbroek, everyone. Okay, I would say welcome to the both of you. Thank you so much for joining me here on stage for, I think, a very important conversation to start with. What are the impacts of mining communities affected? We're going to start off with a short video in a little bit, but before we do, Monica, I actually first want to turn to you, because I was speaking to you before we started, and you also explained a little bit more to me about the fact that you are a traditional healer. Okay. Can you maybe share with me and also with the audience what it means to be a traditional healer?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Monica Ngobo. I'm called Mkhuluntokoso. That is my ancestral name in my traditional health practitioner. To become a health practitioner, it starts with dreams. It starts with visions and you connecting with people's problem, you connecting with the universe, you connecting with the land. And at that time, you couldn't know that I'm a traditional health practitioner. I was thinking this thing came, a dream is a dream, but I was shocked when this dream happens. And maybe I will dream like, or have a vision of, no, go and tell Eunice, tomorrow he must not take a ride to town, there will be an accident. And I have, if I kept that message in me, it's me who's going to suffer. I have to rush for you and tell you that this thing is going to happen. And if it happened, remember, I'll go to you again and say, I did alert you with this. But at that time, I didn't know I have a calling. Then that's where it started in 1997, but I was in denial of, I'm from school. How can I be a traditional healer? How can I have this calling of the ancestors? Up until in 2020, they came strong in me. I couldn't sleep. I have this dream. That's where I found my house full of water. And people couldn't recognize this water. It's only me who knows and who can see this water. Right. And I was like, wet, wet, wet. Then there was one of my aunts who came in. He said, did you pee in your bed? I was like, no. It's just water was full in my house and I don't know where the water is come from. Right. Then I started not to walk. I started not to speak. I was like, and my mouth only open when food has to come, and only the food that ancestors want me to eat. Wow. Or a tea, because now I'm a coffee person, but that time they shift the coffee and give me only black tea with no sugar. And the other thing, they shift you from your relationship. Yeah, they shift you from the people. You have to be on your own space, which is far away from living conditions of people. Maybe in the field. Right. To connect with your ancestors, to connect with the land. And they will be there to teach you. And you have to go in a cave, like 8 months, 6 months, living in a cave, and you won't feel hunger, and you won't feel thirsty, because they are there. And when you are sick, they're going to heal you. Like on Sunday, is it Sunday or Saturday when I came here, I was very sick. I have this cramp in my stomach. And Anna started to search for doctors, but they didn't pick their phone. And the message came. When they give me message, sometimes you will see me doing like this. Right. Yeah. Or sometimes you will see me doing like this. Yeah. Or I will be like, and when the message comes strong, I will be like, because I wanted to connect with them. Yeah. And then I will ask, I will hear what they say, and I will just stand up, because when they came with more powers. Right. And it's sorry, I was going to say, because thank you for saying this. The reason why I also think it's good to mention it up front is because we just want to let everyone know that it might be possible that you get a calling from the ancestors during this session. If it happens, there is the space and time, and please let it happen, but then people also understand what is going on. Okay. And thank you for describing that, because I can imagine that that is quite a journey
Taking away your coffee with sugar, only black tea without sugar.
With no meat.
With no meat as well. Come on, Monica.
And without your family there, your kids, we have to leave everything and go in a separate environment that you are not used to it.
But I do think that some of the things you mentioned, you live it, and it's the connection with the land that you mentioned, that solitude at those moments when you were required to do that it allows you to connect. There is a short video that we want to start off with, and I think it shows also the importance of community and feeling it, and also I think it's a great introduction video for this conversation. So let's take a look.
One of the biggest issues we have is water. So we have to wake up at 12 midnight up until 4 o'clock fetching water. Sometimes we don't have water during the course of the day. It's only a little drop. Leina la me ke Monica Ngobo. Se sengwe gape ke motho ke rata go kopantshang batho. E gore ha ba re batla busetsa mo community, ga ba heleletse ba diragatsa so sewa. Se ba se dirang hela ke go kwala We are pleading with the mines, especially the manganese one, to help us in terms of water, because the mines are using more water than us. People in the Netherlands should know that we are struggling a lot. We have the mines, but we are living in a poor village.
Okay, I think the sound fell off at some points, but luckily there are subtitles, and luckily Monica's here with us in person as well, so it doesn't really matter, she'll just repeat it. But Monica, I saw this, the first time I saw this video, there was one line in particular that really stuck with me, and that was, the mines are using more water than us. I think it embodies a lot about this dynamic that is at play here. I was just wondering, could you tell us and maybe sketch for us a little bit more about what the situation is like in your community and how you're impacted with these manganese mines surrounding you? Okay,
as I've said, I'm Monica Ngobo from the village called Kahung in the Northern Cape. We have 3 municipalities, which is Hamahara, Haskonyane, and Shomurolong. These 3 municipalities are struggling with water. We have issues of water. We have issues of land. But the main fact, the main one is water, where we women have to wake up early in the morning and go and fetch water around 2 early hours, where we can be raped, we can be sexually abused, we can be killed. And these mines, all of them are doing manganese. They are mining manganese. Even though we have diamond one, we have copper one, we have zinc one, but most of the mine in the Northern Cape are mining manganese. So manganese, it affects us agriculturally and it affects our lives. We have 36 mines in the Northern Cape. We have rich minerals, but we are the poor of them all in the province. And the impact, we have environmental impact, where our kids are suffering with respiratory systems, where our women are giving labor to unborn children, where our 0 to 5 year kids having bronchitis, they are having asthmatic problem. And we have, in this environmental impact, we also have the air pollution that is polluted by the mines. And we have deforestations of the mine, we have the land depossessions, we have the health impact, and also we have the unemployment impact in our society. The land, they will force remove you from your ancestral land. You will lose connection with your ancestral land. You will lose the benefits of your lands. And when they remove you, they also touch the cemeteries. They also demolished everything in your land, and you will start to seek where your ancestors are. You will start to think of the place that they have given you is not the same. So you have to connect with your ancestors. You have to connect with the new land that they've given you, which is difficult for us. And on these land depossessions, they also give community the fake document that's saying we will give you school, we will give you health facilities that will be near you, of which all of this is not happening. It was just verbally. When we go to the place that they have removed you, your kids have to travel like 10 Ks to 5 Ks barefooted to search education. And most of our families are less education. They were less educated so that they couldn't read all these bombastic words in the contract that they were given. And also the other one of health impact. As women, we are struggling. As men also are struggling because they became weak, they became depressed, they became having cancer. And as women also, we are suffering of labor relation matters. The other thing of health issues is that our water is contaminated. We are drinking water that is not good for our system, and we are drinking water that is not good for our unborn kids. Also, this manganese, they cause us muscle damage to our body. They cause us headaches, severe headaches. Sometimes you will hear that you have brain tumor. You will hear that you have something that you didn't have before. And also the asbestos. Asbestos did damage our people because most of our parents are no more on earth. And we also have unemployment. Our unemployment rate is high. In a sense that this is impacting us as women and children, because you will know that I have matric, I have computer literacy or N6 or N2. And then when you came to the mine, they will say, you lack license, and then you will rush, source funds for doing your license. After that, they will say, no, you failed the DOVAs. The DOVAs are the tests that they search if you are fit enough to work in the mine.
If you're fit enough to work in the mine.
They call it DOVAs. It's a machine. You came through it, and then it's an A, B, C. You couldn't know if you fail because you don't know what stands for A, what stands for B, and what stands for C. And they will say, okay, Monica, you didn't make it to be employed, but I can make a plan for you. Which means you have to exchange your body with work, of which it put us at risk also. We became prostitute. Not knowing we are prostitute because they give us this mentality that if you don't work, you can exchange your body. So which means our body, our CV to the miners, of which is wrong.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for sharing that, because I can imagine that if this is lived experience and if this is things that are happening to people close to you, then I truly want to commend you for the bravery of speaking that, because these are not like things that you're mentioning, right? Whether it's from the harm that you've seen to unborn babies, respiratory issues, to exploitation to the greatest extent. And thank you for sharing that as well with us, Monica, because I think it's important that we share those stories. I want to get back to you in a little bit. In the meantime, Chihiro, you're also here with us. You've heard Monica mention some of the things that are ongoing and that these communities are feeling and how they're impacted by the mines around them. You also work with groups in the lithium triangle in Argentina, in Jujuy to be specific. Do you recognize any of these things mentioned? Are these things that you've also seen in the region there?
A lot, yes. So I will land on water and actually come back to manganese, because that also goes into the lithium process. But I have a few slides just to situate us, because we're also talking about places where we're not at. And so just want to situate us. So Jujuy is in the north province of Argentina. And this orange triangle that you see is called the lithium triangle, where over half of the world's supply of lithium is located. Some people say it's around 60%, some people say 65%, but all agree it's over half of the world's resources. And there's really struggle in all of these three countries. But this year we saw an immense struggle in the north of Argentina, in Jujuy. And as a result of that, 170 people got wounded by police oppression. 4 youth lost their eye, and many people went into jail. And unfortunately, this is a recurring theme. If you stand up and defend your land, if you defend the environment, there is a lot of oppression. So here we see a few of the people, and this is important actually. Nosotros no comemos batería. Se llevan el agua, se va la vida. So we don't eat your batteries. They take the water, and life disappears. So when it comes, you can go to the next slide. So when it comes to 1 ton of lithium, it takes at least 71 ton of water. There are also processes that take up to 2 million liters of water, depending on which technology you use. With some of the most leading edge, they say they can do it with 25 tons of water. But even so, that is an incredible amount of water for 1 ton of lithium. And even if you know that this region is practically a desert. So there are 4 indigenous peoples that live in Jujuy, also campesinos that don't identify as indigenous, that are fighting, because when the water goes, life goes. Their livelihoods are stolen. Their way of living is stolen. And, well, I don't know how long you can live without water, but that's not long. No. So that's a recurring theme of all land defenders. Before the climate is fucked up, the water goes, the life goes, the livelihoods. Yeah. And then you are forced into jobs when you lose your livelihood. Right. And I think a very important question here is, who are we to talk about an energy transition when we're not talking about energy reciprocity? What are we giving back? Because it doesn't matter if you talk to the people in Mexico where they put 2,000 windmills in their backyard and displaced farmers there, or in Jujuy, the energy goes to big companies, big multinational companies. The environment is destroyed. Ecological, the biodiversity diminishes. The birds, like the flamingos in Jujuy. So it's bad for environment. It's bad for community. It's bad for ecology, economy.
So what happens when you voice this? What is the response to it?
Well, I'm sad, because one of the people that inspires me and who has been in this for longer than I have, Alexander Dunlap, I think he's been writing reports and talking about this in public for since 2006 or something, or 2010. And a lot of environmentalists also don't want to hear it, because they were like fossil free, fossil free, fossil free, and then we are in a good place. Right. And like, unfortunately, that's not the case. Yeah. So I do want to mention, because I'm talking on behalf of community, like the things that are most important to them. Yeah. I have a few bullet points. So 1, violación de derechos humanos, and the violation of the human rights. 4 people lost their eyes because of police violence. Atacando la población, y los jueces acusan a la gente, and there are people who are now facing courts because they defended their territory, and this can lead to fines, multas, up to 20 million pesos. And this is the most poorest province. Yeah. So standing up for your land has huge consequences. And so what they really need also of us is that solidarity in terms of human rights defending, and also pointing out that this is a false solution, los litio baterías, that it only enriches markets. It doesn't bring energy reciprocity. And yeah, that's a conversation bomb.
Yeah.
because
then it's not about maintaining sort of our consumption patterns here in the global north as we know it, but then just making it renewable or like changing the energy source. It really taps into, I think, also what Zita was saying, our economy of wanting more. Sometimes we...
So it's definitely a degrowth thing, but it's also talking military, because with every energy transition that we've seen a change of empire. So we've seen the UK with coal, we've seen oil, the US, and now a lot of people are talking about, oh, this energy transition, China is going to take over. Yeah. And yes, a lot of processing of these energies is happening in China. But then the conversation turns from energy transition to energy security instead of energy reciprocity. Yeah. And cities really need to scratch behind their ear, like after overtaking 500 years resources from the countryside, who the hell are they to show up and take more energy? Yeah.
So it sort of also taps into, and I think those are the similarities in the stories that you were sharing, is if we're just gonna completely be blind to the exploitation, to the danger, to the violence against these communities, then we're gonna maybe get renewable sources, but then it's based on this same sort of colonial exploitation that we've always had. Thank you for sharing that. I'll get back to you in a bit, but I also want to go to Monica because, well, I've heard from you, Monica, what some of the issues are. Chihiro has also sketched it from her side, but I'm curious, when you speak these facts, Monica, what are the mines doing and what is the government doing when you voice this?
What actually the mines are doing? Nothing.
When you say this to them, they do nothing.
They do nothing. They only came to us when they know their license has been expired. According to the policies, they have to come to us every 3 years.
To do what? To consult you?
To consult with us. But what they do, they go via the traditional authorities. Okay. Where they negotiate with them on behalf of us, the community.
Without consulting?
Without our consultations.
And do they know that? Do they know that they haven't consulted you?
They know they didn't consult us. That's why I will say they use bribery to bribe our tribal authorities. And what they do again is that they will seek the registers from the communities. And then we will go to the community hall knowing we have a community meeting. The issue of mining or the impact of mining or whatever based on mining will not be discussed. It will be only issues of the community with the headman or the councillor or whatever. After that, they will use these registrations of us and saying we agree, of which we didn't agree to those things. They have this smart, I call it a smart document, because when you read it, it's very smart. The social labor plan document.
Social labor plan.
Yeah, that the mine has to give the community. But if you went to the mine and seek for that document, they cannot give you. And according to the policy, that document must be accessible for everybody who's a community member. But we don't access it. But through Makua Wamua, because they have lawyers that can speak to the community, that's where we started to have access of that document. Wow. That smart document will say, we have built roads, we have done pediatric wards for kids, we have schools. But when you took this document and you wanted to identify what is in this document to the ground, doesn't speak to each other. When you go to the ground, there's nothing.
There's nothing.
So when you do your social audit checking if the pediatric ward was built by South 32 or maybe by Anglo-American. They will say, no, this is the budget for Department of Health. We didn't get help from anything. Yeah.
How have they responded once you've been voicing this? Because as you said, with the work that you do, and it's of course you and many people with you there in the community, you've been speaking out and you've been making a noise. How are they responding to that? Is it dangerous to speak your mind?
For the minds, it's dangerous to speak your mind to them. Because they will say, no, we will get back to you, but they will never come back to you. The only thing that you will see anonymous people knocking at your door.
Yeah.
And the others will say, if you don't shut up, we are going to kill you. Because you think like you know. So you are coming between our work and our profit. So what normally the mines do, they put profit before people, of which is wrong. Yeah. We need the government to intervene with the mines so that they can help the community with recreation centers, with hospitals, with the facilities that we need. Yeah. And when they came to us as community, they must hear from us that we as community, we need library or we need the road from Lupeng to Haskonyane. Not for them to come with their planning and just to tell us we will do this and that. Yeah,
with the empty social labor plan, as you mentioned it. Wow, honestly, I think it's so commendable, and I think it shows that your bravery, I'm happy it's making them sweat, and I'm happy that it's indeed giving them a clear. But I'm also, it also saddens, I think, many people here in the room, and I think it's unfathomable that the risk that the cost actually of speaking your mind is the risk of death, and it is the threat of death that they are so carelessly using. It's also what you've been saying, right? It's the danger that people are feeling there for their own lives when they speak.
Unfortunately, we know that when people speak up against a pipeline or the oil industry, we know how violent they are. But it's the same with mega projects that are so-called sustainable. It is as violent for people to speak out against mines, whether that's the copper mines in Peru or lithium fields in Jujuy. It's very consistent, and the numbers of environmental defenders being killed are going out every year. It's consistent. It's either 3 people a week or 4 people a week, and that's only the people who are on statistics. Yeah,
you are in close contact with those communities, Chihiro. Have there been any positive outcomes for that lately, and in the work that they do, and in the message that they voice as well?
So from Jujuy, it's not a done deal. We don't know where it's going to go, and that's why solidarity is more important. And they're fighting. They're putting down their lives. So, but there has been a victory against one of the, there's been a court case to hold one of these companies in a mine that has already operated for 25 years. So this is not new. They've been mining for lithium, also for your phones and other things, not just for electric vehicles. And a river dried up, 11 kilometers of river dried up. Wow. Okay. And so they have now been found guilty that they dried up the river. Of course, the river is not coming back, but that means that accountability, it gives a case of reference that yes, these companies are responsible for that destruction.
Yeah, and I think that is, I mean, indeed, it won't bring back the river, but perhaps it will be strong enough of a message to prevent any of such harm from happening in the future, let's at least.
And I would also like to say that movements in Chile have been coming together as well. In 2019, remember, there was supposed to be a climate summit in Chile, and it didn't happen. It moved to Spain. It's because there was 1 million people in the street, and that started with a protest against the metro fare going up. But very quickly it said, it's not just about 30 cents, it's about 500 years, and they're coming for our water. So like The environmental movement, the right to public transport, it all kind of came together, and there were 1 million people fighting, and that's why they moved it to Spain.
Yeah.
So that, I think these movements do show how fights are done.
Yeah.
And connect the dots, because we don't live single issue lives or single issue struggle, and the only way that transition really happens if we learn to be reciprocal on all these matters of anti-oppression.
And it's all exploitation in different forms, and it's all the disadvantage of those in the most vulnerable positions. I think that that goes to show in both cases. Can we please have a big round of applause once more for Monica and for Chihiro for sharing your story. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks. Thank you so much, and thank you to the both of you for sharing your stories. We're very happy to have the both of you here and to be sharing what is happening, and just taking a moment for all of us to sit and listen and have that image being drawn to know what the status quo is that we're dealing with. Now, in a little bit, I'd like to go to our next conversation round, which will focus more on, we know now what the issues are, we know what's happening out there, and we know that we have no time to lose to change it. I think what the both of you so eloquently showed is that this underlying exploitation, this underlying undermining of people is what needs to stop, and we cannot have a new system with it still at play. So we're going to have a conversation about that, but first, I'd like you to think about that question for a little bit. Easy peasy, of course, it's not a hard question. But we're here in a room full of people that are interested to talk about this more, that feel the urgency of this. So I would actually like to ask you, for the next couple of minutes, please find somebody in the room that you don't know yet. So I know which people came in here together. I saw all of you, don't worry. And I want you to have a conversation with each other about what is it that is currently keeping these systems in place that can so freely exploit people in the way that we have seen and heard from Monica and Chihiro being sketched. So what is keeping these pressing issues in place, and how do we change that as well? Take a couple of minutes, and then we'll be back together in a little bit. Okay. Okay. I see that new relationships have been formed. People are engaging in conversation. Okay, everyone, if you get back to your seats, then we're going to restart now. Come on, some of you are smiling too much to be talking about, I think, the topic that I gave you. I think we've entered into the topic of the weekend. Okay, so I am very curious to hear what some of the things are that you discussed. Of course, the question that I gave you is what is keeping these sort of power and exploitation structures in place, but also how do we change it? And I'm curious to hear maybe from some people in the room what they came up with. Is there anybody that said, well, we had actually a very good conversation and that's something I'd like to share with the room? No pressure. You? Yeah? Or were you not? Yeah? Okay, cool. Okay, thanks. If you'd like to stand, then I'll get the microphone. If you stand, then everyone can see you.
Hoi, I think I heard 1,000 very good conversations around me. Yeah. So we've been discussing the powers that are in place, like big groups of very effective lobbyists going to, for example, the COP meetings that do their harmful work. Disguised maybe a bit greenwashing kind of approach, stressing reciprocity and the way they can help and contribute, etc. But then again, it delays and it sort of blocks real development. And secondly, we've also acknowledged maybe weak governments and institutions that are prone for bribes and for deals that are in their benefit, but not for the people, let alone the communities in the exact vicinity of.
Yeah. And what can we do to change that? Did you get to that part of the conversation? I mean, I get that it's not an easy question, but maybe,
But it's an easy question, and it's an obvious question. And well, the answer is the difficulty, right? Yeah. I mean, like not allowing the lobbyists to go to COP. That would be or prevent bribery or support governments to stand firm against the money.
Yeah, this is a clear one. Yeah. Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you also for sharing that. And I think sometimes the solution is also in pinpointing what the problem is, right? Because then if we focus on it and add some more pressure, that also helps. Thank you so much for sharing. Is there anybody else that had a conversation of which they say, well, we had some other things that we noticed that haven't been mentioned yet or that are important to take into account? I see a hand going up here. Thanks. Would you like to stand? Thanks.
Towards the end, we were talking about telling an honest climate story. I think some people don't want to talk about the effects of extractivism because they want the energy transition to happen as fast as possible. Yeah. And I think that we need to have this honest discussion because otherwise we're not going to have a just transition. I think it's also the same when we're talking about climate migration. This is being put forward as a huge monster. People traveling from global south to the global north, when climate migration is not the thing that, that's not, it's not a thing. People move close, and they try to come back to where they're from. And the people that want to move, they can't move at all, because you have to be relatively rich to be able to move. So, yeah.
I like that. I think that's that taps into what Chihiro was saying as well, right? Telling an honest story. Thank you also for sharing it, by the way. Telling an honest story and also being able to, say that we need not just an energy transition, but a just one as well, even when we know what the urgency is, because this is unacceptable and we cannot have a form with it. Thank you for sharing that. Well, you've done the pre-work, because this is exactly what the next panel round will be about. And for that, I want to invite 4 people to the front to really talk about what are some of the solutions that we can all engage with and try to put our best foot forth with when it comes to getting a just energy transition. So can I get a big round of applause for Mpon Kawana, National Coordinator of Makua and Wamua, Danielle Heers, Parliamentary Candidate of GroenLinks PvdA, Joseph Wild-Ramsing, Director of Advocacy at SOMO, and Lisa Miner, Project Manager Fair Mining at Fairphone. Welcome. Welcome to all of you. Thank you, Mpo. Give it up. Come on, people. Give them a big round of applause. Welcome. Hi, everyone. So just to start, some of the pre-work has already been done by the audience just now. We heard from two people what some of the things were that they think are solutions that we can act on. Is there anybody of you that wants to respond to that? Did you overhear any conversations happening around you where you heard some of the things that we should really focus on that could be potential solutions? You know, if nobody says anything, I'm just going to stare until you do.
Well, we had a nice conversation.
Oh, okay, no, go ahead and share with us. I'd like to hear. Would you like to
you go ahead,
share, Lisa? I was staring at you the entire. I was like, Lisa, tell me. Yes. I saw you talking vigorously.
I don't want to say we have the solution. I think that's what brings us all here in this room together. Maybe we find it out together.
Yeah.
But I think it's centered around accountability. There's some actors, actually quite a lot of people, look at everyone here, that want to do the right thing, that want our economy to be reciprocal.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's not the status quo, and that's because it's not a level playing field.
Yeah.
The incentives in our economy are not rewarding the things that are actually good for our future and good for our communities and for people now and in the future.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are some solutions. I think Fairphone, we try to bring about some solutions and inspire industry to come along.
Yeah.
But for it to become really mainstream,
right,
we need legislation, but also accountability. I think the women that have been speaking today are also part of this, right? If structurally the ones that aren't taking into account these important issues are being called out, then maybe we get to a better future together.
Absolutely, I like that. And you're mentioning the solidarity that people that came here, they feel it. And if we can sort of like spread that message more together, because of course it shouldn't be just the people affected by it in the most vulnerable positions to speak their truth, actually to do it. I think there's a big role for us in a more safe space here to voice that. Thanks for sharing as well. I can imagine that must have been an interesting conversation. In the meantime, Bo, I'd like to actually go to you because I wanted to ask you, can you tell us a little bit more? I mean, from your role being a national coordinator, can you maybe share more about what it is that you specifically do at, Women Affected by Mining, United in Action, but also Mining Affected Communities United, where you do your work? What is it that you do specifically?
Okay, good evening, everyone. As our MCFs, our program directors have said, my name is Mpong Kawana. I'm from South Africa, from an organization called MAKUA, which is Mining Affected Communities United in Action. It was formed or established in 2012, shortly after the Marikana massacre, where 34 miners from a Lone Mill mine were killed for fighting for their rights because they were fighting for the minimum wage. So MAKUA, which is Mining Affected Communities United in Action, is a radical movement aimed at raising the voices of the communities that are not consulted in the processes of allocating mining licenses, developing the communities, and also strengthening the voices of women living in affected communities so that they can play more active role in influencing the decisions on their livelihoods. So MAKUA is having 50+ branches across South Africa and still growing rapidly each and every day. And we are based in South Africa, South Africa we are having 9 provinces, but MAKUA we are currently having branches in 7 mining affected communities.
Right, yeah. I wanted to ask you actually, because the question was posed, and I reckon that it's a big question, but I am very curious to hear from you. What would you say is the most important thing that needs to happen, that we should address in order to ensure that we can create a just energy transition, one that is reciprocal?
Sorry, can you please come again?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I wanted to hear from you what you think we should address first when it comes to, what is happening in the mines and the violations and everything that you've also sketched and has been sketched before. What do you think we should do to help people?
And okay, I can say we firstly have to make sure that there is a campaign around the just transition, because as much as I'm from a community that is dealing with coal, and then we are seeing visible impacts, and then we are also having communities like Kuruman, where Mam Koko is staying, where there are very crucial minerals that are very important in the just transition. So if we can educate the communities to say that we are not going to repeat the very same mistake that we did in the mining or coal mining or gold mining, when we are now transitioning from the fossil fuel to the green energy.
Yeah, thank you so much. It sort of taps into what was being said, right? It's telling the honest story, but it's also about raising awareness. And I mean, coming from that coal mine background and seeing how it was done with a fossil source like that, I think it's an important message to mention as well about how we do not repeat that. Thank you for sharing that as well. Joseph, if I can move to you in the meantime. I already mentioned that you are the Director of Advocacy at SOMO. Can you maybe just briefly explain a little bit about what it is that you do and how it relates to this topic?
Yeah, so thanks so much. SOMO is a research organization, so we do research to dig up facts and knowledge about some of these things that are going on around the world in the energy transition. And our sort of key focus and the way we approach these conversations is from the perspective of power. And I think we can talk about corporate power, we can talk about people power, but I think when we talk about what we mean when we talk about a feminist and just energy transition is one in which the current power dynamics which are in play are upended, basically. The corporations, I mean, back to the colonial times where I think Zita mentioned it earlier this morning, sort of the history of Amsterdam and the Netherlands and Western countries that had this colonial approach to extracting value, extracting wealth from around the world and concentrating it in places like Amsterdam and leaving the people in those countries, those other places around the world with basically the negative impacts of that. Is a model that we see continuing to today, where we don't maybe have colonial powers in the same way that we used to, although it could be argued that that is still the place, that's still the case. But we have corporations now, we have multinational corporations, which have basically the same function, which is to extract resources and extract value and extract wealth and concentrate it in a small number of people and a small number of countries. And so that's really the perspective that we try to take in looking at these aspects.
And knowing that perspective, asking you the similar question, what would you say has the biggest priority and that needs to be shifted? Does it lie with how these corporations or sort of like perhaps it's governmental? I'm curious to hear from you what sort of policies and mechanisms are the biggest priority to put in place into combating the exploitation?
Yeah, so I think, and that's all, maybe transitioning quickly to the solutions or what needs to be changed to make this change of power dynamics happen. I think obviously there's information power, knowledge is power, so we need to get information to people. That's the role that SOMO hopes to play a lot. The law is power. We need good laws and we need good policies, and we need to have people that are empowered to use the law to file, lawsuits against companies. And we need the accountability that Lisa was talking about as well. And the people power, the streets is power. And we need to, we see so much change happening. Some of the examples that Monica and Chihiro were talking about getting people out into the streets. That's how we get politicians to change the laws and the policies that then we can use and feed with the information.
Yeah, because that is interesting, because on the one hand, I think it's so important to raise awareness about the stories, and at the same time, I think if awareness were the issue, then it would have been resolved by now, because, I mean, we have people like Monica, we have people like Mpo, we have the communities that, for example, you were speaking of, Chira, as well, that are voicing it, and they're trying to make it visible, risking their own lives to do it, and at the same time, we're not where we need to be. So there's a certain sort of power dynamic also that we need to overcome.
Absolutely.
Are you optimistic that we can bypass that and change such a fundamental, almost power structure in that way by putting pressure on the system?
I'm optimistic because I've been to South Africa, to Monica's community, and I've seen the power and the optimism of the people there. I've been to Jujuy and to the lithium flats, the salt flats, and I've seen the power of the people, the life power, basically, the people power of, despite facing this oppression, despite facing these terrible situations, these people maintain their power. And there are so many of us around. There are so many of them. There are so many of us around the world. And there are all these people who come on a Tuesday evening to listen to a talk. So that gives me optimism. And at the same time, I know that I'm not naive about the challenges that we're up against and the powers that we're up against. But we do see, I think we do see cracks starting to come in the system, and if we can, as a group, if we can identify those cracks and be strategic about which power structures that we're going after and how which tactics we're using to do that. I think, I'm quite optimistic that we can break those power structures.
Yeah, thanks. Oh, he agrees. I see a supporter. And Monica as well. I saw you nodding and smiling. Yes. Thank you so much. Hey, one of those tactics that has been mentioned a couple of times has to do with policies, sort of the political, governmental role. And when I say that, I'm going to turn to you, Danielle. You're a parliamentary candidate for GroenLinks PvdA, a progressive Green Party that we have in the Netherlands. The elections are upcoming. Hearing all of this from your sort of perspective, what would you say, is also the role of, for example, GroenLinks PvdA in ensuring that we make an energy transition that is just and fair?
Thank you. I think if you look at the program, and we did our best to actually get a feminist focus in the program, and I think we were okay with your chart. You know, you scored all the programs through a feminist lens, so that was good. But if you look at the program, it's very much aware about the power dynamics that are going on, and it states very clearly. You called it energy justice. You didn't call it energy justice.
Reciprocity.
Reciprocity. So it's not like explicitly there in those words, but the program states very clearly a couple of things. One, we cannot continue using the amount of energy and resources that we're using now in the West, or specifically it's Dutch, so in the Netherlands. So the first thing is reduce and reuse. And without us going there, we can never reach a just transition because we're simply using way too much. So that is step one. And then there is another element very clearly in the program that says, we can only continue using resources if we do it in a more equitable way. So the priority of exploring resources should be the increase of well-being of the people that live near those resources or work in the mines or whatever. So it's clearly there. Now the question, of course, is
how do you get to that ambition?
How do you get there? And will that be a priority? Because at the same time, we have very ambitious climate goals, and they have to be met by 2030, and like that. So, and there, I think maybe linking to what's been said before, in the Netherlands, we seem to be unaware that what is happening elsewhere will also happen to us. And maybe not to us in the room today, but we see it in Groningen, we see it in Gemoer, we see it in Tata. So the logic that makes so many people already suffer from the dynamics that are going on are already with us.
Right. They can
so there is an urgent need to change these dynamics. And that
And that by itself also calls on us to organize better. So not only have the activists in place, but also call on the companies and the powers, not really the powers that be, but I think there is, and that makes me optimistic, within our society, there is a much bigger group than we think. That actually wants these changes to happen.
Sorry to interrupt. At the same time, I hear what you're saying, and maybe for the people that are not from the Netherlands, you mentioned Chemours and Tata Steel. Well, if you take Tata Steel, for example, it is a steel manufacturer that has been emitting lots of chemicals and other stuff that is very bad for the health of the people surrounding it and living it. So I think indeed it's a perhaps not the same scale, but it is a dynamic that perhaps people can recognize when they hear stories like this.
Can I just say why it's so interesting? So Tata Steel is an Indian company. So it's an Indian multinational that didn't invest in any of the technology that's out there, knowing they're polluting and increasing the health problems and everything of the people surrounding. So we see now what it means to live in a sacrifice zone, because part of our country are sacrifice zones.
Absolutely. And
other than our own company even.
And I wanted to ask you one more question, because I think those ambitions that you described, we really need them. At the same time, we also know from sort of human behavior that I think a lot of people, to some extent, they know what's up because it's being shared on social media. So sometimes it's not enough to just have awareness. I think for us, especially in the global north, to sort of take a step back and not engage in that economy of more, as Zita called it. So, well, these ambitions, do you have like concrete plans or like regulations to sort of enforce them?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that...
I have read the whole program and I know it by heart.
I do too.
Well, I think there's some very concrete examples, like isolate all the houses, starting with people that have less income, so that you it's a way of reducing energy demand.
Specifically with regards to these critical materials that we're talking about?
Yes, there is in some of the programs of not only the Green Left Labour Party, there is a very clear ambition to have CSR regulations, which we have been battling for like over 10 years, and now at least it's everywhere. So there's regulation coming on. There's also a very high ambition on taxing the polluters and rewarding the companies that have ambitions on sustainability and now cannot compete with unsustainable companies because they get subsidized. So it's a very weird. So
I like that.
Start redressing all the imbalances that were created because of the powers that are in charge.
I read your program as well, and the last point you mentioned indeed about taxing or sort of almost pricing the impact. So if we change our economic system where we say, okay, the social impact that you're having, the harm that you're causing to communities, we're gonna monetize it and you're gonna have to pay for it as a fine. Well, if you can sort of like, I mean, we still live in an economy where financial value is king. So if you can hit it where it hurts, so to say, that might be something that can shift that a little bit.
And there's one thing in the program that I really love, and I think all of us, the recognition of the incredible importance of a strong civil society to make these changes happen, both in the global south as in the global north. And I think that is also why we're partly here together, because we want to move on, and but we have to have the space to do so.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you also for sharing that. I heard you mention companies also a couple of times, so look to my right. Lisa, I'm back. I'm curious to hear from you. I mean, you work for Fairphone. Can you maybe just talk us through and explain to us a little bit more? You know, what are some of the strategies and solutions that you employ to make sure that your extraction is done fairly in the creation of the phones?
Yeah, there's a lot to be done. So very briefly, for maybe people that don't know Fairphone, we are a social enterprise. We're Dutch, based in Amsterdam. And surprisingly, we create phones, but we also create other electronics. And our mission is really to motivate the industry to act more responsibly by proving that there's a market for ethical electronics. And that involves a couple of steps. That involves actually creating ethical electronics. And that's exactly your question. How do you do that? It's not easy. We're a small company, but we have a good ambition, and I think we have a few strategies that have already proven some impact and can actually really make an impact if the rest of the industry follows us. And that's also part of our mission, right? We want to show that we can do it, and if even we can do it, why doesn't the rest of the industry do it? And if they do it, our impact becomes big. Now, what do we then mean with doing? I think it even already starts before the extraction of the material. I think we heard, right? Buying more. We need to think consciously about what we put on the market and how many materials we're consuming. So a lot of businesses are actually driven by selling more and more and more. Mm-hmm. And our ambition was really, okay, right? Every new year there's a new phone and you need a better phone.
Yeah.
Let's create a phone that actually lasts. Let's create a phone that if it breaks down, you can repair it yourself. That gets software support for a long time. And you know what? We recognize we are people. What if a better camera comes out? You kind of want to get that new phone with a better camera. Well, we created it in such a nice way with puzzle pieces that you can just buy the better camera and don't toss away all the valuable materials that went into like the core module of your phone, which is like, if we talk about CO2 only, 90% of the CO2 that's being produced in the materials of your phone. Yeah. So we start really with thinking consciously how we consume. Yeah. But then if we have to use materials because we want to be connected with each other, we want to do that responsibly.
Right. So what does that mean, responsibly? So I mean, even if somebody goes to your store and they buy a Fairphone for the first time, the stuff that's in it, how do you ensure that what's in it is sourced fairly?
Yeah, it really starts with assessing which materials are we sourcing and where are the biggest risks to human rights and environment. Mm-hmm. And really focusing on those in our sourcing. So a lot of interesting claims that you could make about, 90% of the weight of our phone is responsible. Well, we actually assessed which materials have the biggest risks to people and the environment. And we put a lot of effort in a material where we source very little of.
Yeah, but has a big impact in the extraction of it.
But we feel we can make a big impact. So it really starts with being aware of the risks that there are, recognizing them. Because I think also a lot of companies, once they know their risks, they kind of want to shy away from them. Mm-hmm. But as an economy, we need these minerals, right? So we actually go there where the risks are, and we know we want to source responsibly, and we actually want to engage. We want to embrace that the starting point that we have is that there are children working in mines, that there are gender-based violence happening. We know that there's environmental impacts happening, and we say, okay, we know where you're coming from, and we're gonna do our best to together continuously improve. And we do that through projects, through partnerships, through engagement. I think two key examples are our work on living wage and living income, where we really recognize that the people working and producing our minerals, but also manufacturing, like assembling our phones, they don't earn enough to have a decent standard of living. Yeah. So we actually calculate, okay, what would they need for this decent standard of living? There's methodologies for that. What do they currently earn? Well, their employer can't pay them more because the market is so competitive that if they do, they don't get any clients anymore. So we actually just take it as a living wage bonus. We see it as an actual and material cost. Yeah. And we say, hey, we pay that out directly to the workers. Yeah. We also have a similar thing with mining communities in the DRC, with tin mining communities.
Okay, if you could briefly.
Super briefly. We give them unconditional cash transfers just so that they can have a decent standard of living. Yeah. And also we do worker voice. So what we discussed a lot with communities, with workers, that they're heard and that we work together with our partners, that they actually effectively manage
the issues that are raised by these people.
Yeah, thank you also for sharing that, and also for I think it's very fundamental what you're sharing. It's about rethinking the way in which we just carelessly consume. And I think even what you said about like, oh, I want to have the better camera, I think even that mentality of always wanting incremental improvement is something that we can sort of maybe reflect on and rethink, because in the broader light of what you sort of do a trade of what is sacrificed for it in the broader scheme of the world. And I think that's an important one to do. Thanks for sharing that. In the meantime, you've been listening for quite a while, so if there are any questions, just please raise your hands, and then we'll get a microphone to you. But before we do that, I'd like to go to you, Mpo. If it's cool, I was just curious to hear. We're sort of like engaging a little bit into what are recommendations, what are things that we can do differently. I mean, you just gave some very concrete recommendations, I think, that more enterprises and companies could embody, where they really prioritize sort of the living income and what it could look like if they would concretely do that. But from your perspective, Mpo, what are some recommendations from Makua and Wamwa that you would say are important to share here to the audience?
Okay, thank you again for giving me the chance. What I can say is that in South Africa, we do have laws, but as mining affected communities, they are not really favoring us as mining affected communities. So as affected communities, we are saying that, okay, as Makua, the movement, we are saying that because these laws that are there, like Mineral Petroleum Resource Act, is not favoring us as a communities. As Makua, we are saying, can you please amend this law, this document, and include FPIC, which is free, prior, and informed consent, so that as communities we can have a say, we can be given a chance to say whatever we want it to be included, even as our own motto says, nothing about us without us. And then we are saying we want to have a free, prior, informed consent to ensure that the communities are fully informed and their consent is obtained before the extractive activity takes place, in which in return will ensure that damage and destruction is limited. Okay, and then we are saying that we want to hold the mining companies accountable, because they have to account for whatever that they have done to us as the mining companies, because the government should also impose the binding rules and legislation on international companies to ensure accountability. This legislation should ensure access to information and access to justice, such as through the UN binding treaty on business and human rights, because now we only have social audits to gather information ourselves as a community tries to ensure accountability, but this should be legislated.
I like that. Those are very concrete ones, and what you mentioned, there is a law, but if the law is not complete and if it doesn't specifically mention perhaps those that easily fall underneath that law and then don't have the protection that it has, how important it is to specifically and concretely mention them then, right? So that is the free prior consent, I think is what it's called, that you mentioned. Sure. And indeed, international companies, what can we do with legislation in order to prevent this? I'm hearing a lot of things, and I feel like throughout tonight we've heard a lot of things. So it's about enforcing that legislation. It's about having those laws. You're working on it as well in a national context here, Danielle. At the same time, before we've also heard from Monica that sometimes when you have these plans in place, what do we do when bribery happens? What do we do when we have, somebody from the audience also mentioned perhaps a government or authorities that are not acting in the best interest of the welfare of the people? What do we do then? I think that is also a question that needs to be addressed. And maybe, I don't know, Daniela, I see you nodding. How do you sort of make that trade-off, weighing all these factors?
I think, again, all the demands that you laid on the table, they are already enshrined in international agreements, like of the OECD.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the basis that we want to have put in law, so that multinationals that violate the rights that have already been agreed on can actually be brought to court, which is impossible right now, although all those rules already exist. So this legal thing is extremely important because there are a lot of multinationals in the Netherlands, and maybe not because they produce here, but because they make the best use of us being a tax haven. It's an interesting place to be able to bring multinationals to court. And that's also why that law is so contested. So that is one.
Yeah, that's an interesting one,
And that's also why the struggle is so big, and why we desperately need our society to realize that we want this law, and companies to stand up and say we want this law. Because if not, we're having major problems also for our own value change. So
absolutely.
that law is a thing. And the other one, and that is that we haven't been speaking about that for the moment, but I think it's also important to recognize us being a tax haven, and thereby not only we actually feed this power dynamics by making the rich companies and rich people, enabling them to even become richer without returning anything to society, especially in the countries where we get all the resources. So that is another topic which makes that our country has a major negative impact on the rest of the world, which we need to address.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like how you put it, because it's indeed emitting the sort of the giving back that is needed to the welfare of society, and much more. It's about taking accountability to what is being done. I want to actually stay with what you're saying, because you're sort of refocusing that attention here. So you've mentioned some incredible points, I think, that are so needed with regards to legislation, policy. We've heard some concrete examples here. We haven't spoken about our patterns of consumption that much, and we haven't spoken about it as a key contributor. So I'd like to go to you for that, Joseph, but maybe just, I'm also curious to hear from the room. Maybe we can do a little statement again, or we can see what the feeling is like. Do people think that it would be, if you think that it would be one of the priorities that we should be speaking about how we consume, our patterns of consumption, if you think that that is a priority in enabling a just energy transition, will you please stand up? If you think, no, it's more to do with legislation and companies, remain seated. Ooh, oh, this is a fairly even distribution. And we even have a hand.
A bit like...
Okay, wait, check what the sentiment is. So you raised your hand as well.
Yes, first. It's easier. Yes, it's very important. For too long a time, I think, we have get the floods all about the country, and it should stop. Yeah. Our consumption pattern is far too much. And we should know that, and we should take immediate measures to limit it and to bring it back.
Okay, that's very clear indeed. I see somebody here that also agrees with you. Please, would you like to share why you think this is one of the key priorities?
Yeah, I think most of us, we all work for companies. So if we don't believe ourselves to reduce something, how can we convince our own, let's say, direction to change something? So. Yeah. Power is to the people, power is to the employees. So start with yourself and then be the good example.
Right. It says something about the credibility and the willingness. There are also people that remain seated. Oh no, it's always dangerous to avoid eye contact when I stand next to you with a microphone. You remain seated. Would you like to share why?
Yeah, sure. I just still don't think that many people are aware of the fact that they're consuming. So when you buy something new, it's cheap, it's small, but it's still consumption. So I think it should start from a broader range of regulation. Then it should go to the individual in that sense.
Oh, I get it. So I think in a way you agree, I think, with the people standing, but you just don't have any faith that they are the ones that are going to take action themselves. You think regulation.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, interesting. Anybody that really thinks that we are at the wrong end here? Somebody that remains seated. I am scanning your eyes. Where? Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. Here you go.
Well, I wanted to say I don't think you're at the wrong end. I just think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, we're here in a room with like-minded, highly educated people. And I think that there's also dozens of people out there who don't want to hear the message, who don't hear anything about changing their consumption. So I really believe it has to come from higher up to, get it done for those people that do not even want to talk about this.
So then you agree that it's an issue, but you think, I think it taps into what you were saying.
I don't believe we can get the message across to enough people, to all the people. Look at, for example, the farmer demonstrations we had here in the Netherlands. I think the gap in society is too big to make all these people, get them all on board, or we have to do it together. I think we need rules for that.
Okay, you said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I hear someone profusely nodding when you said that. Would you like to share? You agree?
Okay, thanks. I agree with him. To say there's a gap in terms of consumption. So the consumption in the global north is not the same consumption in the global south. We, at the moment, we see ourselves having a need to be parallel with the global north in terms of consumption. Let's look at the phones, for example. Most of us are still using Huawei and stuff, but what I've noticed since I've here, I'm from South Africa, by the way. So what I've noticed here, everyone is using iPhone. So there's a need, or there's an edge to use iPhones back in the global south. So if we regulate how these products are being produced and these minerals are being extracted, we are heading in a brighter future.
Yeah, I like that also about how we're sort of mirroring each other as well. Thank you so much, all of you, for sharing that. You may all sit down again, rest those legs. Joseph, I do want to go to you because I want to ask you the same question. What do you think about sort of the importance of us here in the global north and our consumption patterns in the grander scheme of this story?
Yeah, well, you can see that our consumption here is driving the problem, and exactly what the solution is an interesting discussion to have. But maybe, Rico, if I brought a couple of slides just to show people, and we've been talking a lot about the phones, but Selma, we've been doing a lot of research on electric vehicles. That's sort of one of the new sort of solutions for climate change is more people need to have electric vehicles. But if you look at, and the top figure is what the current global car consumption is, car fleet is today, 1.6 billion vehicles around the globe, and a small fraction is electric. The blue ones up there are electric. And if we're moving in the path that we're going towards, there are going to be more electric vehicles, a lot more, which you could say is a good thing. But if our consumption, our total consumption of electric vehicles doesn't stop, it's just going to lead to, if you go to the next slide, you can see this is the projected increase in demand for these different critical raw materials that we've been talking about today. The manganese that is from Monica's community in South Africa. The lithium that's from Jujuy in Argentina.
What are the implications of this? Because this is insane.
This is a dead world. This is an impossible situation if we're going to continue on this path. I mean, this means basically the destruction of the planet. So we know we can't go in this direction.
So what will we do?
Just one or two,
two
more.
I'll wait for the slides. Sorry, yes. You've put me in an existential position
so to bring it, obviously, to bring it back, well, you know, and there are different things that we have to do. Again, I think it's the information power. It's people knowing about this, people knowing about the consumption. But that's that's just one step. Obviously, the power of the law and the power of policy, and we need to get politicians and laws change. Some of these laws that Danielle is talking about in holding companies accountable, making polluters pay, making companies pay. We also need to look at the tax policies, other ways in which corporations gain their power is through the taxation policies, where again, sort of companies are allowed to extract value and extract resources from around the world and concentrate those in small number of places. Also, our trade, European trade policies are another enabler of corporate power, an enabler of continuing situations like this. And I don't think, I mean, to get back to the question of is it consumers or is it companies or regulation from the top or bottom, I don't think we can expect that consumers will make the right choice, even if they are informed, if companies are allowed to offer them cheap, products that are full of exploitation and full of human rights abuses. So the accountability from the top that we've been talking about has to be there, but it won't happen if we don't have the grassroots movement and we don't have the power coming from the people
that are also voicing that it's needed.
Yeah.
But then this means that in a way the only path forward is degrowth.
Degrowth. Obviously, there is really no path forward that doesn't involve some form of degrowth, obviously.
And that will not happen unless we...
And a redistribution of power dynamics as well, because it needs to be the women in South Africa that are empowered and that have the power to make the decisions over what's happening. And if we continue this path in the global north without allowing the people in the South to speak, then we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you for showcasing this, because I think it really shows the severity of the situation if we don't act soon and if we don't get our head out of that sort of false narrative. I think it was mentioned before. Is there any question, by the way, from the audience to either one of our panelists? In the back, I see a hand. I see 2 hands. I'll collect them. We're short on time, but I have faith in your succinctness and in my ability to sprint to the people, so I'm leaving now. Okay, I am going to start with you. Oh, actually, Venus. Oh, okay, there is a microphone there. This is efficiency.
Thanks. First of all, thanks so much to everyone for this conversation. I really feel very inspired and hopeful. I do have a critical bit of research I'd like to share. I'm an economic historian.
Okay.
I worked at the OECD for a little bit, and I have a question about the Dutch role in all of this specifically.
Please ask.
Because there's no country in the world that benefits as much from unequal exchange as the Netherlands. Every man, woman, and child in 2017 was subsidized to the tune of $8,000 that year through unequal exchange. Since 1960, this is $250,000. This is a huge subsidy to every Dutch person through the trade laws that you mentioned, for instance, on the EU level.
Okay, and your question is?
So my question is this. Changing this, going to an equal playing field, involves decreasing our GDP to the tune of 14%. How do we sell this? And I think we can. I'm not pessimistic, but how do we sell this? If we're honest about what it entails.
I think it's a really good question. Thank you for asking it. Danielle, I reckon you know the Dutch context best. We're coming into...
I give my part of the answer.
Yeah.
I'm also an economist, so that makes it easier.
Yeah.
I think we have to be very careful not to get too stuck in repeating the same metric over and over again, while we know that the GDP is not the only thing that we measure. And we are happy, we are lucky, because we now are starting to use other metrics that have to do way more with well-being, and in which we also score badly as far as our impacts outside of our country. But at least now it's visible. So I think one of the ways to do this is not to get too stuck into repeating the GDP as an objective, and challenging that metric and putting something in place that still shows that we're getting subsidized by the rest of the world in an incredible for an incredible amount of money. But at least we can then address it because it gets visible. So that would be part of my answer.
Oh, I like that.
And it's even, I just want to say this, VNO-NCW, I don't know what's in English. It's the big...
it's the employers
union. They embrace the metric of broad well-being. They don't interpret it the way I would do it. But so it's out there, and I think we should make smarter use of it.
Yeah, so it's not just the financial financial value that we should be measuring, but it's social, it's natural, and if we do that, it's a different story. You also had a question. Would you like to stand and the people can see you?
Sure, yeah. My question was also for Danielle. We talked about regulation and accountability, and you said there was like a desperate need for a law, and maybe I missed it, but I was wondering what law that exactly is and what it contains, and if you could share something more about that law.
Joseph can also really talk to this. It's a law that makes it, that puts into law the international agreements we have around business and human rights. So what we have now is OECD agreements, but since they're not in law in the Netherlands, we cannot use the legal system in the Netherlands to keep the companies that are in the Netherlands to account for them breaching these international agreements that we already have.
Yeah.
So it's like with the Climate Change Convention, we all agree on something that's very nice, but unless you put it into law, you cannot force certain players to respect the agreements that we've been making. So that's the only thing that it does.
Yeah. Okay. Joseph, would you like to add? Or?
Yeah, no, I think you put it well, Danielle. And I think the core of it for me too is making sure that companies here in the global north are held accountable for what's happening abroad. The consequences, the implications of their decisions here to source from a particular country or from a certain mine or pay a certain price for wages, all the way down their supply chain. That they are held accountable for that decision, that it's not just like, oh, we do our thing here and whatever happens over there, that's somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
It's our problem here, and it's their problem.
Okay. Bo? Can I look at you? Because we've been having a conversation now for a little bit about the role that, for example, the Netherlands plays in the global north. What role do you think we should take up with regards to our consumption? Maybe you, if you want to add, you don't have to.
Okay, let's archive the question.
Maybe it's also, I can imagine, maybe it's, of course you're from South Africa, maybe it's hard to then say, well, in a different country people need to do this. Yeah, but I mean, I think you did speak to some of these things because you did speak about holding these international companies accountable more. I think that is something that we can definitely do more, especially given what Danielle also mentioned, that many of them are based here because we are a tax haven, and also what you mentioned with local laws, how we can lobby for that more. But of course...
And maybe, I mean, because we've been talking a lot about the impacts on the lithium, the sort of the new transition minerals, but she's from a coal mining community in South Africa, and the just transition, a feminist transition, is not only about where we're going, but how we're leaving behind what we're leaving behind. So we're leaving behind coal and oil and gas, but how are we leaving behind? Are the corporations that were there for decades, exploiting the resources, exploiting the people, are they going to be allowed to just pull up and leave, take all their money, take all their profits, and leave all the impacts behind? Or are we going to make sure that they pay the costs for the transition to a new forms of employment, new forms of, and rehabilitating the environment that they've destroyed over those years? It's not only about where we're going, but also how we're leaving. This is sort of the responsible exit element of a just transition.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I definitely agree. I see a lot of people nodding. So I think, it's being underlined. And with those words, I want to thank the four of you. Thank you so much. Can we once more get a big round of applause, everyone, for Danielle and Bo, Lisa, Joseph. Thank you so much. I think you said it very nicely, Joseph. It's not just about how we move forward, but also about how we leave things behind. And as we're approaching the end of this event, we want to leave you. We want to let you leave with a special contribution still. Because there was somebody that you saw earlier on stage, Chihiro, and what you don't know perhaps about Chihiro, or what you might know about Chihiro, is that she also writes a lot of protest songs, and there's one that she wants to perform for us here. So accompanying her is Joey, so please give us a big round of applause, all your energy for Chihiro Geuzenbroek and Joey.
Hi, everyone. So good to be back and also digest some of these emotions. So while Joey's setting up, we're going to do a call and response because we have a lot of emotions and a lot of them we're not learning to use in a very renewable, recyclable way, like anger and sadness and grief. So are you ready to mobilize some of these emotions and digest them? Yes. Okay, cool. So I will say something and you just repeat, and there should be slides, so if you don't understand what I'm saying, you can read. Okay. Our anger, our sadness, and our grief. Our anger, our sadness, and our grief are fertile ground for resurgency. Our fertile ground for resurgency. Our despair is not defeat. Our despair is not defeat. It's fertile ground for resurgency. It's fertile ground for resurgency. Resurgency, resurgency. Resurgency, resurgency. We've lost so much, can't you see? We've lost so much, can't you see? Resurgency, resurgency. Resurgency, resurgency. We're here to repair our society. We're here to repair our society. Woo! So resurgency, for those who do not know, it's the same word that's connected to resource. And in a capitalist world, resource is just for extraction. But actually, resource comes from resurgentia in Latin, that which has the capacity to rise again. So this also speaks to uprisings. So the resurgency is also an uprising of people power, and it's also kind of speaking to that we have the ability to rise again. And that regenerative power that we're seeking in all of this transition, it starts here in the gut, and it starts in socializing that. And yeah, so we're going to close with a song together. Joey and I are part of a band. We're also playing on Saturday with a full band. If you can't get enough of the protest music, please come and join us at the Tolhuistuin. Sorry, just an announcement. For We Are Warming Up, which is the whole weekend about climate and art. And we'll be bringing a song now, Shell Must Fall. Wouldn't you all agree? And it's really shifting the narrative from, no, we're not going to allow you to repeat all that misery you've already brought to the world, and now you want to be green and you go to Brazil and you start sugar plantations and you call it ethanol, which it's not. It's very problematic all the way. But really, all of these ideas of giving companies second chances are racist ideas. Because if we say that killing people, raping people, displacing people is a crime, they should not have a license to operate. So Shell Must Fall is a campaign, it's a call to arms, and it's also really holding our criminals accountable in the Netherlands. So let's go. 300,000 Ogoni people. Wait. Yeah, let's start again. Do you remember 300,000 Ogoni people on the streets in '93 to end the ecological war waged by the corporate greed? 3,000 oil spills, no reparation. Then came the military. Crops were destroyed and petrodollars, but killing police. Slow down a little bit. We're going too fast. Yeah. But killing police. We blocked the street, shut down our industry. Oh, can you hear our call? Shell must fall, shell must fall. Ogoni people not forgotten, shell must fall. They were raped and tortured and murdered for oil. Ogoni people not forgotten, shell must fall. Just 3 miles from indigenous land sits a toxic waste pool. Domestic trash, fracking dumps are lethal. With 2 spills a day, you know you can. How can they still operate? Mapuche people file a legal case. How long must they wait? We block the street, shut down our industry. Oh, can you hear our call? Shell must fall, oh, shell must fall. Mapuche people not forgotten, shell must fall. They poison the water, threaten health of all. Mapuche people not forgotten, shell must fall. In the 60s, it was predicted that it would make the land shake. Now 60 years later, extraction has caused over 1,000 earthquakes. They tore the land and cracks in the homes and in the people too. Still bureaucracy, state complicity protects the fossil fuels. We block the street, demand accountability. Oh, can you hear our call? Shell must fall, shell must fall. Groningen is not forgotten, shell must fall. Denying them just only their greed is royal. Groningen is not forgotten, shell must fall. Shell must fall, oh, shell must fall. Human rights are violated, shell must fall. Shell must fall, oh, shell must fall. Climate crimes around the world, oh, shell must fall. Shell must fall, shell must fall, shell must fall, shell must fall. Everybody now, shell must fall, shell must fall, shell must fall. Da 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 da. Ba 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 da 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 da. Shell must fall, a shell must fall. Our goal is clear and we are unstoppable. Unstoppable, unstoppable. Our goal is clear and we are unstoppable.
Thank you so much, everyone. Please, once more, give it up for Chihiro and Joey. Okay, this also brings us to the end of this 3rd episode of the Feminist Climate Academy. Thank you so much, everyone, for your energy, for your input, for engaging in conversation with each other. Thank you to our speakers for sharing their stories and for all of you being here. Chihiro, I loved how you said resurgence, which I didn't know that resource comes from that word, but that which has the power to rise again. Well, if I see the presence here of everyone, and it's been mentioned a couple of times, I think the fact that you chose to be here on a Tuesday evening, I think that says a lot about that potential for resurgency. So thank you for that. Now, in 2 weeks, we are going to close this series with a session on Thursday, the 16th of November, just a week before we have our national elections here in the Netherlands. Well, we have 3 international guests who will introduce topics to politicians from the whole spectrum about loss and damages. It will be about climate justice, about so many different topics. topics. If that is something that you'd like to see, and if you'd like to know more about, what is it that we're going to do to have a feminist climate action with that regards from, political parties here a week prior to the elections. Please do come, bring your sharpest questions, insights, everything. We'd very much love to see you. We are going to talk about fossil subsidies, about agriculture, about phasing out fossil fuels and much more. Lastly, what I also want to mention before we leave is all our events are for free, and we'd like to keep it as well in that way. So if you'd like to, contribute to that mission, you can consider becoming a friend of Pakhuis de Zwijger. And in the same fashion, if you want to empower the mission of ActionAid and everything that they do with the Feminist Climate Academy, please go to their website where you can also donate to make sure that more of these sessions can be contributed. I'm going to end by stealing one of your lines again, Chihiro, because there was so much in there that I think is really on the lines and sort of summarizes what we said. You said, our despair isn't our defeat, it's fertile ground for resurgency. I think that's a beautiful one to end on. Thank you so much, everyone, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.